Hello everybody, this is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. I'm making a video today to show you um, an example, if you will, of decisions that many of us who are drawn to these machines have to make or choose to make. And that is which machine to keep and which one to not. Now, some of the people who watch my channel and then others of you you may know people who collect things. They collect all sorts of things. Sometimes they collect them because they're rare and collectible, and sometimes they just like them. And I have met people who have gotten machines from me who have lots of sewing machines, some new, some old. Some of them have vast collections, shall we say. Well, I'm not actually one of those people, which might be surprising given how many machines I've come across in the 9 years I've been doing this. But basically, you all, those of you who followed my channel before, know that on a number of occasions, I've come across machines that were unique, sometimes because I just haven't seen them very often, and at other times, they were just in remarkable condition in terms of the aesthetics, like no paint chips, no scratches, or something like that. Sometimes I inspect the motors, and there's almost no wear. I've had, it's a fairly small number. I've had sewing machines before where when I went in to restore them and overhaul them, I discovered that in fact, I don't think there were many hours ever put on the machines, and it's just simply because someone either didn't want to sew or they never learned to use the machine properly, and it was put away. And if you're lucky and the machine was stored indoors in climate control comfort, wow, you can end up with some incredible time capsules. And you're looking at a few right here. You are looking at the Singer 403A or the Singer 403, whichever you prefer to call it. And the Neki BU Mira. Now the Neki BU Mira would have come out in North America in the early 1950s. So the Singer 403 launches around 1956. So, we're talking 3 or 4 years difference. However, and of course Neki also had models that they introduced in the late 50s with machines like the Supernovas. But I'm showing these to you because neither of these machines is considered rare. Singer was sold more sewing machines because they were such a big company. The Neki company, for a European brand, trying to duke it out in the North American sewing machine market, they did pretty well for themselves, in part because they had introduced the zigzag feature in domestic sewing machines. They were either the first or one of the first to do so. And by the time the Mira was launched in the early 50s, they had already had zigzag in the BU models. And that helped put Neki on the map. And they grew pretty quickly during that period. And of course, Singer had been around, been making sewing machines longer. But anyway, I was making videos of these machines, and it's one of those situations where you often have to, yes, I can keep both of them, but should I? I'm not a collector. These are not rare. They don't belong in museums, but or maybe they do. I don't know. But I don't really have the space or the inclination to keep multiple machines hanging around because I like them, which is perfectly good reason if you do that, or I like to display them or what have you, because I like overhauling machines so they get used. Machines are happiest when they're being run. They like many all steel items, they don't do they're not at their best when they're sitting, right? They get sleepy, they go dormant, and then they have to be woken up with the process of overhauling and cleaning and lubrication and adjusting and parts replacement and so forth. And so this is a situation that I have found myself in before. So what do you guys think? I'm not taking a poll to decide which machine I'm gonna use. That's kind of a random way to do it. But I wanted to kind of involve all of you in my thinking process. So let me give you an example. If you had a situation where you either had to decide which of the two machines you were going to buy, and these are just two, but we could do this with any combination of sewing machines. If you were in that position, or maybe you had several and you were going to sell some, how do you know? Is it purely based on aesthetics? I love the aesthetics of both of these machines. But what calculus would you use? For me, it's far more practical. And even though aesthetics do matter, in terms of performance, both of these sewing machines are magnificent. But they're magnificent for different reasons. If you wanted a machine that would sew the absolute heaviest material you can sew with a vintage sewing machine in a domestic model, a household scale model, then Neckies such as this one from these early 1950s are hard to beat. If you need zigzag, if you want straight stitch, the Straight Stitch Singer 15-91 direct drive is what I consider to be the strongest straight stitch domestic machine ever built. That's just my experience. In my opinion, I have no data to back it up. And I'm making videos on that machine. You guys can chime in and tell me what you think. But in terms of zigzag models, the BU Nova, the BU Nora, the BU Mira, like you see here, they are literally some of the strongest machines I've ever seen for the purpose of sewing extra heavy fabrics. These particular machines also have a wonderful satin stitch. The short zigzag version of the Necki is glorious. I mean, you can make zigzag satin stitches that look, well, they kind of are embroidery, I guess, if you depends on your definition. Just extraordinary. So you say, well, why don't I just use this one? And you might say, well, I want to do decorative stitches with cams. Well, you could do that on this Necki. Most of the Neckis from the early 50s you could not. Later Neckis would have a little opening in the top where you could put cams in. But for this generation of Neckis, you couldn't unless you had the Wonder Wheel attachment, right? I don't know if it came with the mirror or whether it was extra. I wouldn't be surprised if it was extra, but anyway, if you've ever seen a Wonder Wheel in action, it's kind of a fun thing to watch. The cams go on here. I don't know if I have all the parts to restore the Wonder Wheel on this. If I do, I've never had all the parts on one machine to make a go of that, but we'll see how that turns out. But and so you could do decorative stitches. It's a bit more of a setup to do, but it's kind of fun to watch. But then that leaves us with the Singer 403, and you think, well, why in the world would I want the Singer? The Singer can also sew heavy fabrics. It has a direct drive motor. There's no belt. That's one of its advantages. It also has the drop-in style bobbin. Some people like the convenience of that. Other people don't care. Doesn't hold as much thread as the Class 15 bobbin of the Necki, but you don't have to take the bobbin case out. Again, I'm splitting hairs here, really splitting hairs in terms of what people sometimes like and don't. The Slant-O-Matic, because it has a slanted needle, while it certainly has the power to sew heavy fabric, you can expect to pop or break more needles, because when the needle is not at its exact vertical like it would be on the Necki, the needle comes under more strain and can break more easily. But of course you have a ton of decorative stitches you can do with the Singer. Again, which is superior? I don't think that's. I think it's a false choice. I think they're both magnificent. And kind of answering my own question, when people ask me, I get this question so much: what is the best sewing machine? Just tell me. You've seen all these machines. You've worked on them, and to be totally open-minded about it, there is no single best machine. Are you going to sew really, really heavy fabrics? Do you care more about just some basic zigzag? Are you going to sew heavy stuff? Or do you want to sew beautiful decorative stitches? Do you want to sew lots of garments? again, it really depends on what it is that you're after. And I know that sounds like I'm giving you a complicated, uh, unclear answer, and that's because well, it is complicated and it's not clear. It just depends on what you need. And this is why when someone says, hey, I use a Singer 99, right? And they love it, and it's a fantastic machine because it is, right? It all depends on, does it suit your needs? Now, some of you, many of you, have more than one sewing machine, and that's because you have, over time, you've come to the conclusion, which is really what I've come to, is that no single sewing machine can do everything magnificently. It's really tough to say every machine can do everything better than every other machine. That's a pretty heavy statement to back up. And that's why some of you have multiple machines. I have clients who have brand new electronic computerized machines for specific purposes, and yet they will also have a vintage machine, particularly when they need to do something heavy, or maybe it's just because they don't want the complexities of software. They just want to get in there and just, you know, do some old-fashioned sewing with an old-fashioned piece of equipment. But very often, and this is why when I make videos, you often see me using size 16 and 18 needles. I will use size 14s. I often put 14s in the Singer Slendomatics. I really like 14s for garment, you know, light to medium weight wovens. But yeah, you are looking at basically the I'm going to propose that, in fact, there are lots of great vintage sewing machines, lots of great brands, lots of models that were great in all the brands, and a few that were not. They didn't always knock it out of the park, but construction quality is incredible in both. This machine is heavier, but this one is still all metal. It has aluminum in it, which is part of the reason it's lighter in weight. And again, working on them is, I would say, equally complex for me when I overhaul them, but for different reasons. They have different things about them. If you're going to restore one of these Neckies, bear in mind that the tolerances or the closeness of the parts was tighter on many of this generation Necki than it was in some of the Singers. I always want to say some, not all. And that means that if your Necki has been sitting in an unpleasant environment, you may discover that, in fact, the parts of it can be frozen and you're going to have to get it unstuck. That can happen with any sewing machine, including any of the Singers, but it is more common in a Necki. I have been fortunate so far in my cursory, you know, investigation into this Necki that I purchased. I'm lucky because I believe it was stored indoors all of its life, and so I haven't yet come across that. And even, you know, the zigzag function is moving. The hand wheel, when I get to disassembling the hand wheel, then that's what we will. That'll tell me if if the hand wheel was ever removed for cleaning and lubrication. The Necki hand wheels. We'll talk about that when I start playing with the Necki further. Very often I have, in order to get the hand wheel off, and it was designed to come off, I often have to coax it with heat and penetrant oils because, again, oil can act as a glue when it gets really old, and the tighter the spacing of the machine parts, the more difficult it is to pull them apart. Not saying you can't do it, and I may be fortunate and not even have that issue with this Necki here. Just an observation over time. But does it keep me from wanting to restore them? Oh, heck no. Just incredible. So they sound different, they function differently, but both of these machines are magnificent. And I have yet to decide if I'm going to keep one over the other. Who knows? I may end up selling both of them and find yet again something else I would like to take on, because the fact is I have to create space in order to work on these machines. And I've had times when I've had a lot of machines in my workspace, and my preference is not to have to do that. I rescue them when I find them. When I saw the Necki, I thought, well, it's a Necki BU. It's one of the finest Neckies ever made. Um, how long will it be before I see another one? I don't know. Sometimes I come across machines in droves. They come in waves, and then I don't see them again for a while when I'm out looking. So there you have it. Two machines, two great machines, good at different things. Um, Let me know what you guys think. What if you were making the decision? And no, it's not an option to keep both, because I don't want to keep both. I don't need more than one sewing machine. I'm not a highly skilled sewer like many of my clients are. I'm a sewing machine restorer, but I like to have a machine on hand to to mend things that I have here around the house that I use. So really, honest to God, it doesn't really matter what machine I have, but it's tough. And of course, the 403 came with this table that expands, that I've shown you guys, or will be showing you, is a wonderful design for a sewing table. And then I've just recently created a video on the table that the Necki came in, and that whoever bought this machine, you guys will see that not only did they buy the most expensive Necki you could get in 1952, 53, they got the most expensive table. Someone who dropped a lot of coin for the privilege of owning that. And so that's one of the things that inspires me to overhaul these machines, is to give them the care and the attention that they deserve, because no one does this anymore. No one makes home sewing machines, domestic sewing machines like this. And when I say like this, I'm not just talking about the color and the design and the layout. I mean, no one makes anything for consumer grade sewing at this level of quality. They just don't. There are industrial machines and semi-industrial machines that are higher in quality than the plastic wonders that are sold for home use. But although I have restored and overhauled industrial sewing machines before, my forte is really in the domestics. I just get more demand for the domestics. And I have people who often will say, hey, I think I want an industrial sewing machine, but we have a long conversation before they actually dive into that, because that's a different kind of setup, a different kind of, you have different benefits to an industrial sewing machine. But most of us, for our home needs, these good old-fashioned vintage all-metal home sewing machines are just so powerful and strong. I really think most of what we need to do in a home setting can be done with them. There are exceptions to that, of course. So some of you have industrials at home and you love them and you need them, but wanting and needing and keeping, those are all very subjective things. So I don't know. I don't yet know which one of these I'm going to hold on to. It depends on how much demand I get from people, but people eventually will say, no, I want that machine, I want this machine. And I end up selling it. It's happened to me many times when I thought, oh, this is the one, I'm going to keep this one, this will be mine. But I always seem to find people who need them more than I do. And they want something that's been overhauled, that's been, tended to and given the maintenance it was meant to have, so that they can do what they want to do, which is to make wonderful projects, with their sewing machines. Thanks for watching, everyone. I had some nice lighting in here today and wanted to show off to you my current dilemma of making a decision on a machine to keep. I've been here before, and I probably will again, with trying to decide which machine is something I'm going to keep for myself. But don't hold your breath, because who knows? Both of these machines may be sold as soon as I haven't listed them yet. We'll see. Depends on how badly I want to sell it. How badly do I want to keep it? Should I even list it? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. What are your thoughts? Do you have just one machine? Do you have hard times having just one machine? Some of you I know out there, you have a lot. I have met people who had over 100 vintage sewing machines. Where they put them, God only knows. I didn't actually see them, but there are people who, they're like me. They can't help themselves. They want to, rescue a machine if it's if it's about to go into a dumpster, and because there are people who do that, they don't realize it, and they'll throw these magnificent devices. They'll just throw them away or put them on the curb. I once found, I once got a Singer Featherweight from someone who found it on a curb. It had been put out on the sidewalk. I am not making that up. And I rescued it and got it working again. Anyway, guys, I'll stop rambling and let you ponder your own collections of machines, and let me know. Put down in the comments if you've had a machine that you loved and decided to sell, and maybe you thought it had a better future or better home in someone else's hands, or if you can't help yourself and you can't let go. Anyway, put your comments there below, and I appreciate you all watching, and we'll see you next time.